This video is brought to you by Game Maker, the free, fast, and easy-to-use 2D game engine that helps power modern classics like Undertale, Hotline Miami, and Hyper Light Drifter. Starter templates, official asset bundles, and a wealth of tutorials are available to help bring your ideas to life. And you can export and share your game for free on all non-console platforms. But you don't have to take my word for it, I'm just some jerk. We have an actual bona fide Game Maker on hand.
Oh shit, that's me. Yes, I've been using Game Maker for a long time. It's probably the most powerful and easiest to use engine for making 2D games out there, suitable for both amateurs and hardcore coders, and with all the Steam and console integration stuff for when you're ready to start monetizing your hobbies. I used it to make my recently released game, Starstruck Vagabond, which has already delighted thousands of sci-fi cozy game aficionados, thanks to Game Maker being so bloody great.
Head on over to the Game Maker link in the description to begin your game development journey today.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Windbreaker podcast. I'm Yahtzee. I'm joined as always by Marty and Jay.
Port.
And this week we're talking about the movies that have influenced games. And I want to say early doors that we're not talking about adaptations here, are we?
No, not
Video games, to their fault, have often aped cinema as a medium, and the two mediums have acted in parallel for a long time, certainly since video games started making all the money. And there's one or two films that one can certainly point to say have had a very huge influence on the popular aesthetic of popular video games, shall we say.
For example, films. I've written so many movies down.
Oh, great.
It's disgusting how many movies I've written down.
I'm going to guess that the one thing I'm about to raise is one of the films on your list. You ready?
I am ready.
Saving Private Ryan.
It is.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, quite directly to. Steven Spielberg even executive producing Medal of Honor.
He founded DreamWorks Interactive, which made Medal of Honor, which was the very first of the Second World War shooters, and started the whole trend, which arguably led into the trend for modern warfare shooters we now have.
Yep. And it still won't die.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, there was. Obviously, there was a million war movies that came beforehand that directly inspired Spielberg himself for Saving Private Ryan. But it seems like it was one of those movies. There's actually a handful in the late '90s, early aughts that I feel like they weren't necessarily pulling from video games, but there was almost like a similar energy or like a kinetic verve running through pop culture at the time that directors in Hollywood, as well as folks making games, were sort of tapping into. And so you have things like Saving Private Ryan, and even a couple of years later, Ridley Scott's Black Hawk Down.
Now, was part of that 9/11?
Saving Private Ryan would have been beforehand, and Black Hawk Down would have been afterwards, I believe. But definitely like. It is funny to, Black Hawk Down was 2001, but it is funny to look at 9/11 as so much media is directly commenting on that. You play games shortly after 9/11 and you're like, oh, okay, this was clearly something that like impacted all of life, including pop culture.
Do you remember when Deus Ex Invisible War came out, the American box art had like a tagline on the front that said, "The future war on terror"?
No, really?
Yikes.
Yes, this is true, because it came out. When did Invisible War come out? That would have been like, 03?
2000, yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, you want to change that.
Yeah, because the original was 2000. That's one of my benchmarks for video game history.
Yeah. Those kind of phrases, too. It's funny when I'm sure we'll talk quite a bit about Kojima-related things, but people play Rising Revengeance. And when the evil senator from the game literally says he wants to make America great again, everyone's like, this was before Trump. But it's like, well, obviously pulling from Reaganomics, and like this was less predicting the future and more like knowing which way the wind was blowing.
But it was more than just the theme of Saving Private Ryan that influenced games. I think that whole like introductory sequence of the Normandy landings in Saving Private Ryan was specifically a very huge influence on the way warfare games would be presented, if in games like Call of Duty onwards. The chaos, the running through the enemy fire, the screaming. It was all
almost
jolly.
romanticized that kind of fucked up fantasy of like that horror, and a lot of games after that try to replicate that through gameplay. I don't think it ever hit. I don't think anything ever will hit as hard as that scene in Saving Private Ryan.
In the original Saving Private Ryan, yes, it's very fucked up and horrible and violent.
Oh yes,
and I'd say in the original Call of Duty, it speaks to that. Like there's a sequence in the original Call of Duty where you're in the Russian army and you're part of a charge where one man gets the rifle and the other man gets the spare ammo because they were so short on resources.
Yeah,
and that's pretty like horrifying as well. I think it was only in where do we want to say Call of Duty started glamorizing it? Maybe Modern Warfare 2?
Yeah. Well, that was when you kind of the early Call of Duty and even Medal of Honor games, obviously you're like quote unquote a superhero because almost every video game protagonist is, but it felt like you were more of a regular everyman, which was very much what stuff like Saving Private Ryan or Thin Red Line or Black Hawk Down were about. Whereas eventually in these games, you are kind of just a superhero, like to the point where you know, your health recharges or you do wall running. Like
you literally are wearing a mech suit.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Fucking Call of Duty Modern Warfare, sort of in parallel to Game of Thrones, they started out doing the sort of anyone can die thing, where they kept killing off the playable character. But then if you keep doing that for long enough, sooner or later you're going to have characters that you've invested too much story in to be able to kill, which is what happens with Game of Thrones towards the end.
The guy from World at War, there was the Russian sniper dude in World at War, who then they kept bringing back in Cold War and stuff like that. And for me, I'm all for telling a unified narrative between these games, but also when you have these superhero characters that will not die, it really does take away a lot of that. And for me, World at War was the beginning of that. Every game after that, I feel like starts to go down in a lot of aspects, not necessarily gameplay-wise, but just how grittily it's presented.
I suspect I found exactly the right spot to make Toffee like kick his leg when I scratch him.
Toffee's fighting his own World War in his dreams right now.
Oops, what's happening now?
Whoopsie poopsie, we're back.
Oh, sorry. You were trying to get Toffee Cam up, weren't you?
Look at the things we do for Toffee Cam.
Oh, that's the spot. Oh, that's the spot. Oh, that's the spot. Oh, that's the spot. That's the spot. That's the spot.
We named a couple of the war movies that have obviously heavily inspired games going forward. Another big one that I'm sure you were also thinking of, Yahtzee, which is on the thumbnail for this.
Yes,
and it's kind of a two-parter. It is both Alien and Aliens, and you were annoyed because Aliens was going to be your number one, right?
Yes, I would say Aliens is the film that has most unilaterally influenced games across the board.
Okay. Sorry, we needed a thumbnail. Was either that or The Matrix? I'm sorry. Why do you say that about Aliens in particular, James Cameron's sequel?
Well, it's got the monster horror thing that the first movie was doing, but it's also got the Colonial Marines thing. I'd say more so the way the Colonial Marines are presented. You can see in basically every like big cock first-person shooter. Like I remember playing. Do you remember Turok, the FPS that was like a reboot of the Turok series?
I do.
That game like literally starts with an exact copy-paste of the scene where the Marines get out of cryosleep from Aliens.
Yeah, Halo games have begun with that. I mean, Doom 2016 kind of gets you coming out of cryosleep. Yeah, it's even. I did a full Alien franchise rewatch the last week or two leading up to Romulus coming out this weekend, and it is fascinating how like the pacing even of Aliens feels like a shooter campaign in that there are very specific levels in the games, and it's like, oh, it is us. It's almost like a siege level where we're in this room and we don't know where they're coming from, and they're coming from the door, they're coming from the ceiling, they're coming from the floor. There's specific levels where they're lurking around a vent, and they have equipment with them where you can use sonar and radar and stuff, and you see their presence.
The first movie or like pop culture reference to the phrase "game over."
Game over, man. Game over. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yes,
So,
and then there's the scene. I mean, there's literally a scene where the Marines crawl down ventilation shafts as well.
yes.
Yeah. Which is, again, any movie with a vent, Die Hard, that when he gets an event, also those vents are so clean. We need to get dirty vents.
Way too clean.
Yeah.
Rub up those. Also,
They need to be
weapons and armor. Like the Marines, I think their aesthetic has influenced a lot of things. Like whenever I see the characters from Gears of War, it makes me think of aliens.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I remember did you ever see that film The Rock with Sean Connery?
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that and thinking, hey, those Marines are dressed exactly like the Marines in Half-Life.
Yeah.
I'm thinking...
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, thinking back to it, that's got that same sort of die-hard style lone hero behind enemy lines sort of thing that so many video games implement.
Yeah. It's
I think this is a fun topic for me because what I've always thought is that I love it when a video game manages to recreate what feels like a movie moment using its like organic gameplay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I always think of FTL, Faster Than Light, because when I'm playing that, I get into a fight, and then like my higher brain will thinking, hey, I need to, like, the enemies are stronger than I thought. I need to redirect power from the shields to the weapons and attack their weapon systems. And then I'm like, hey, that's exactly the sort of thing Worf would do in Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yeah.
Make me feel so good.
I'm bloody well immersed, I am.
Yeah, it's funny
And then
because
more
it's those
recently-
games that aren't distinctly based on a movie that tend to do those movie moments better than, like, your regular adaptations that we used to get every time a big summer movie would come out.
You know what's a great recent game for that sort of thing? Lethal Company and that whole subgenre that's emerged of the horror extraction shooter.
Yeah.
That can create a lot of alien-style moments where you're alone in the darkness and you're wondering why your teammates aren't replying on the radio, and then something makes a noise in the darkness that you're not sure is someone you know.
Yeah, I think a lot of modern horror is, I mean, not even modern horror, just horror games in general pull from the big hits, right? They pull from Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, in terms of how zombies are presented, how sort of a zombie siege would be like in either of those. Halloween and Friday the 13th.
Project Zomboid does a good job of recreating that Dawn of the Dead feel of trying to create a holdout against the zombies, and then all your careful plans falling apart because of one little breach in security.
Can't trust that person.
28 Days Later had a big influence on the zombie genre as
Fast
well.
zombies,
Oh, sprinty zombies, yes.
Zombies,
That's when sprinty zombies became a thing. I guess Left 4 Dead is directly
really took that to the next level. Yeah,
ties into that.
And then Days Gone with their freakers. Remember the freakers? Days Gone. Only 90s kids will remember freakers. And then
just as a side thing for 28 Days Later, they're making 28 years later, but they're releasing it 27 years after the original, not 28.
What a missed opportunity.
Maybe they just think people can't count anymore.
It's one of my most hated things ever. It makes me sick to my stomach.
Absolutely disgusting. Other horror things that I feel like have had, you mentioned Lethal Company and stuff. John Carpenter's The Thing, I feel like introduced kind of that paranoia horror, that Among Us, that a lot of social deduction games, Werewolf, obviously Lethal Company itself, of not being able to really trust what your eyes see.
Yeah. Really after the fact, though, what do you think would be an example of films like setting a tone that games of the time would recreate? Because I think of all those shooters on like 16-bit and 8-bit platforms that were paying off the old 80s action hero tropes. They'd even have like posters from like Commando and slightly photoshopped for the box art.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, Contra, even like Solid Snake being directly designed after like Snake Plissken from Escape from New York and everything. Obviously, Kojima's keeping it close to his vest.
That was absolutely unashamed.
Yeah,
as a reference to Hollywood action heroes.
You got away with it back then, and even the tie-ins, right? I feel like, as we were saying at the beginning, a lot of the best games we saw, or we still see today, are trying to emulate a feeling from those popular materials rather than just copying them. The games in the 80s that were tie-ins were previously made games that they slapped the IP on and got it out, rather than games like Metal Gear, which was trying to emulate a feeling and an aesthetic and did it in its own way. I think the influence is way more powerful than the actual imitation.
Sure, like the ET game famously is about ET falling in holes and having to use his neck to get out. Whereas if someone was like, "We're making an ET game now," I'd roll my eyes, but at the very least, I feel like I could understand what some of those mechanics would be.
A stealth game, hiding in the house,
falling in holes,
riding a flying bicycle. I don't know.
Riding a flying bike, yeah. I feel like there's a couple like texts in terms of all big adventures feel like they're cribbing from Star Wars and like Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I mean,
as we made it into the 90s, the Matrix and Lord of the Rings. I feel like those are kind of 4 big blockbusters that I feel like have their DNA all over the place.
I think Lord of the Rings is a good example because that was like happening at pretty much the same time video games are really embracing the big, glorious open world. That whole, New Zealand is one of the characters in the film thing that Lord of the Rings did. Really feels present in a lot of the big meadowy open worlds you'd get later on in games like Far Cry 3 and Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah, even The Witcher. I feel like whenever the camera zooms out and your character feels like a little speck running in the environment, I just always think of Lord of the Rings. Like even in Death Stranding, when that happens, I think of Lord of the Rings.
I remember those shots from Lord of the Rings where they zoomed out far enough that you couldn't tell it obviously wasn't John Rhys Davies running behind them, dressed as a little dwarf man.
There's no way they're getting Ian McKellen to climb up this mountain, so it's just someone else. Yeah,
he's a pretty tall guy, John Rhys Davies.
Yeah, which is weird because a lot of his characters always between Gimli and the bud he plays in Indiana Jones, they just seem small for some reason.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones is another one in terms of I feel like it as a movie. I think one of Spielberg's things was like we want to do something exciting every 5 minutes in that movie, and the variety of things that are done feel very much like how a modern adventure game is paced, whether it's through spelunking through tombs or puzzle solving or hand to hand or gun combat, and then like an exciting vehicle set piece and everything. So like obviously your Tomb Raiders, your Uncharted.
Yes. Indiana Jones really set a visual style for the concept of adventure. I remember playing fucking Pickaxe Pete on the Magnavox Odyssey, also known as the Philips Video Pack. Where the main character on the front box art was literally dressed as Indiana Jones, and that was obviously what you were supposed to take from that.
Yeah. I mean, you even play Crash Bandicoot, and there's like the famous level where the boulder's running at you, and you have to run away from it. And that's just kind of language that was pulled directly from what Spielberg and Lucas did with Star Wars. I had a couple more written down, just touching different genres. Crime movies. I feel like the bank heist in Heat, and then the subsequent shootout kind of in the streets of LA, downtown LA, is something that whether games like Payday or GTA kind of directly pull from. It feels like what he did there is when you think of a bank heist, that's how people think of it now in games.
Yeah.
Well, I think of Dog Day Afternoon, but that probably wouldn't make a very good video game.
I think that would make a great one. Screamatica. Yes. Scarface, obviously, directly, like Grand Theft Auto has had no qualms with pulling, Vice City very much pulling from Miami Vice and Scarface and everything. And then,
yes, it has made no bones about that sort of thing. Even like from the very beginning, it was cribbing off. Well, because it was made by a British company, a lot of it was cribbing off British gangster movies in like the very first couple of games.
Yeah.
Especially
Americana set in.
Especially GTA London, 1969. Thinking about it.
Man, I do not remember. I've barely played the top-down ones. I just feel like, to me, like my brain can't wrap my head around like that such limited view.
That was why it was like the massive hot property it became until GTA 3, of course.
Yeah.
I think it's always IPs or like movies where you can actively see very vividly a gameplay mechanic evolving from a specific scene. Like you said with Indiana Jones, I'm going to cheat a little bit here because it is a movie tie-in. It has a tie-in, but I think Spider-Man 2 had a huge influence because of the game that spun from it and how that pushed.
Yes.
Like there weren't a lot of good, superhero games until that point, and then they just started trying to spew them out.
Yeah.
That certainly felt like the start of the what I used to call the superhero sandbox game, but which I now call the traversal-focused sandbox game.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, where it realizes that kind of if you're going to be going from point A to point B 90% of the game, make it feel incredible. Like make the player not want to use, make them not want to use fast travel. Like I think that's one of the best things I could say about the modern Spider-Man games is like I never want to use fast travel. I just want to be like, oh, it's only 1 kilometer away. I can swing there.
I didn't even know it had fast travel.
The chumps use it.
I always enjoyed not using fast travel in games like Just Cause 2 as well, even though that has a massive map.
Just about to mention Just Cause and Just Cause 2. Mm-hmm. Those games are the peak of that kind of game for me. Absolutely love them.
I'm just gonna keep rattling off a couple ones I had written down. Bruce Lee movies, and specifically Game of Death, where his whole thing is he needs to like traverse this pagoda, and on every floor of the pagoda he has to like fight a different boss. And the number of times, like especially in RPGs, but in a bunch of games, you get to a place and you're like, ooh, I have to work my way up this structure, and there's like a different challenge on every floor that I have to take care of. That's one of those where I'm like, oh, everyone cribbed from this, but in the best possible way. And even kind of just the kinetic nature of fight scenes in this, like you can draw a distinct line to fighting games as a whole, as a genre.
Yeah, one-on-one fighting games always have the tower match.
Yeah. On the animated front, I think Studio Ghibli movies, both in terms of visual aesthetics, like the number of, you even see like Nintendo shifting there with Breath of the Wild, kind of having this painterly look where the environment looks like a Miyazaki movie, or so many indie games coming out like Planet of Lana or the upcoming Europa that look like that. But even more so stuff like the way Princess Mononoke portrays sort of this like evil corruption in nature, and like an evil blight taking over a natural land is something you see in Breath of the Wild, you see in
it's a very common motif in like certain open world games, isn't it?
Okami did it.
Also, like if you watch Nausicaa, that is just Breath of the Wild, basically.
Yeah. Like between Nausicaa, Castle in the Sky, like the way Castle in the Sky has these floating islands, and sort of the its automatons are things that feels like you fought before in not only in Zelda but in games like Nier. Sorry, Eric, we're just like rattling things off, and Eric's like desperately but we appreciate that. And
so do you think? Here's a question: do you think there was a cinematic influence that led to Dark Souls' popularity?
Yes, it's not a cinematic though. It's Berserk. It's a book.
Yeah. Okay. Honestly, that is. Yeah.
I want to say maybe Lord of the Rings has a bit of a hand in that as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. Western fantasy in general. It's like Miyazaki's spoken about his influence on just Western fantasy.
In Lord of the Rings,
Berserk very famously, delves into that.
In Lord of the Rings, the movies kicked down the door and made, I guess, along with Harry Potter, like made fantasy mainstream and cool, like that kind of thing. Like elves and dwarves weren't just like, oh, look at this nerd playing D&D. It was just, oh, this is the most popular thing in pop culture right now.
And both Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter does have a certain grim aesthetic going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not cartoony. Like there's bits of Lord of the Rings that feel really, I don't want to say horrific, but when I think of Dark Souls, I think of a sense of oppression and hopelessness. And there's many sequences, especially in the latter half, as Frodo's like struggling to get that ring up through the last bits of Mordor. Where it has a very similar feel, He even has to fight a big spider lady at one point.
Does. And it's not nearly as attractive as the spider ladies. And
you can see a lot of the influences, like the ring race and the Nazgul have such an influence on a lot of the enemy designs.
That will upset the arachnophobes.
Yeah.
Every time I have a cutout of a giant tarantula in Fully Ramblomatic or something, I get it up my ass from arachnophobes saying, give us warning next time, or put googly eyes on it or something.
Arachnophobes are usually the most vocal group of people who are scared about things. Maybe that's just because spiders are so commonly used in media.
Yeah, I feel like if you're scared of like millipedes, they just don't show up as much. So
Yeah, me being scared of the concept of deep water, that doesn't show up a lot in Fully Ramblematics.
Or it's hard to convey with like a jump scare.
With an image of a pond.
It's such a common phobia, spiders. 'Cause, there's something very primal about the fear of spiders. It's the way it looks like two grasping hands going, I'm going to get you.
Yeah, which is why in Elden Ring, they turn the spiders into just hands. Just a bunch of fingers coming at you. No one wants that.
Out the middleman.
Yeah. This isn't a movie, this is a TV show, but you see they just released a story trailer today for and new previews for Silent Hill 2, which I don't want to say it, guys. I'm back on the
I am resolved not to watch any of the trailers or previews. I will play the game in full when it comes out. Don't even put it on there, Eric. I'm going to cover it up in my view so I can't see it.
But one of the inspirations for, I would say, for Silent Hill and for games like Earthbound and Deadly Premonition was Twin Peaks. Obviously, a television series now. Okay, thank you, Eric, for making it so that Yahtzee can see it.
Thank you.
Twin Peaks,
Deadly Premonition in particular. Yes.
Yeah, and Suda and Swery games as a whole. I feel like Twin Peaks, the just the atmosphere and vibes, and sort of slightly like a radio that's or a record player that's slightly askew, and so the sound comes out strange. I feel like that is something that was so many people have cribbed from over the last 30 years.
Alan Wake, Control, like anything has this kind of like the supernatural in a
Remedy especially. Yeah. Then the last one, which again started as a book but obviously became a movie, but Battle Royale, the Japanese novel,
in a very direct sense. Yes, that was very influential.
Quite literally. That's probably my number one. That is probably one of the most influential movies for one
Yeah,
they took
that mechanic becoming
and turned it into a game. That's it.
Yeah. Because not only did we
explain.
It really is.
I want to make a game that's basically just Battle Royale. Great, let's call it Battle Royale. Job done.
Yeah.
Let's break for lunch.
Okay. So yeah, whether you like it or not, that seems to have had a major influence. And I'm also less a single movie, but just the kind of the MCU and its the way it rewired a lot of our thinking into everything needs to be connected. Like there needs to be a cinematic universe for this thing.
I thought you were going to say the Marvel Universe is the way to get us to think everything has to be monetized. Because if you look at Marvel's Avengers, it certainly had that influence.
Yeah.
Cynic.
Yeah. Do we? I guess so you don't watch a ton of movies, but I'm just curious if there's any thoughts of what might be the next thing that is pulled from an aesthetic standpoint. I'm curious if a lot of things we're seeing it already in animated movies, but pull from the Into and Across the Spider-Verse movies, which are kind of this collision of a bunch of different art styles and kind of like worlds jammed together, but with a real singular voice. And I'm always crying because games have a hard time of really switching its aesthetics too often, just because settling on one feels like a core pillar of game design. Are there many games that every so often just completely change the way that they are presented or viewed or played that aren't, I guess, indie games? Because I feel like indie games are able to do that a little more often.
Well, Resident Evil 4 leaps to mind.
Yeah, tonally, where its various sections will feel very different,
and mechanically, the way it's switched to its third person, rather than
and the graphics were way ahead of its time. I sometimes refer to Resident Evil 4 as the herald of the PS3 generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It brought with it the brown zone.
Yes.
Yeah. That sounds like it was a poo thing, but it wasn't a poo thing. I was just calling it the brown zone. Those were the ones. Those were the ones. I guess we didn't talk too much about the Matrix. The Matrix seems like a big one in terms of action scenes and slow motion in general, right?
Well, I guess when things become too obvious, they hide in plain sight.
I might throw a counterpoint out here. I think The Matrix was more influenced by specific graphic novels and games itself, which then created the Matrix, which then fed back into games.
Yeah,
It was the Matrix was before Deus Ex, wasn't it?
Matrix was
2021,
99.
I believe. 99?
Yeah, Matrix was 99. Yeah, April 99.
So what games would you say the Matrix would have been taking influence from there?
Ocarina of Time.
Okay.
Bullshit. Good question. I think it's
they
mainly
took a lot from anime. I know the Wachowskis were adamant. Like Ghost in the Shell was obviously a huge.
Ghost in the Shell, like specific mangas and stuff like that. But game wise,
yeah, I don't.
I'll have to think on that. Loop back.
It feels like they're obviously the way action scenes unfolded in the Matrix would directly go on to inspire, a slow motion dive in shooters, and so you had that in Max Payne, you had that in Stranglehold, it was just something that tons of third person games would be like, Fear, that kind of almost like the birth of like ragdoll physics, which seemed obviously the Matrix wasn't the first movie to do it, but yeah, I'm just wondering. It's funny because so many of the things we mention are from the 80s, 90s, aughts, and so few of them feel like they're from the last couple of years. So I am curious if it's just one of those like.
Well, there was certainly a cyberpunk vibe that Matrix feeds into in video games in that period. I mean, even something like Quake, with the precision shooting and the sort of tech, monochrome techno bass effect, sort of. I don't know. I'm talking out of my bum here.
No, I agree.
Yeah. And there's even a couple people in chat have mentioned Blade Runner, but the way Ridley Scott kind of designed Near Future,
Ridley Scott clearly having a lot of influence on games for his multiple.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And having the cities kind of be this homogenized hodgepodge of cultures and religions that have all jammed together, where you have signs that are in English and Chinese, and like a sun that never comes up, this constant rain.
Not to discount Gladiator as well. Like Gladiator had a huge impact on, bringing us media that was very heavily based in a specific time period, and getting down to a specific niche.
Yeah, it's funny. I was someone in the chat mentioned 300, and I wanted to say, you could certainly see that influence in stuff like Rise, Son of Rome. But thinking about it, that was almost a direct copy paste of certain parts of Gladiator as well.
Yeah. I'm curious if Gladiator even like. They're not a 1-to-1, but if Gladiator's popularity somehow impacted the original God of War, to kind of be like, oh, okay, people are fine with having this sort of sword and sandals mythological journey of, revenge and redemption and everything.
But it's also gritty in a way that sort of reflects to me what Rise Son of Rome was doing, in that it sort of applies the attitude of a modern warfare shooter to a historical epic, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying there. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'll be curious to see, we might not know it in the time of what the big influencers are now. Like there might be a show or a movie that is impacting younger creators.
Well, but basically everything that's popular gets licensed by Dead by Daylight at some point. So we could always just look at that.
So the metaverse, the Ready Player One and Neuromancer, those are the.
A friend of mine described. A friend of mine said that Dead by Daylight is where IPs go to die. And
no.
They just added another one. They've put fucking Castlevania in it now. You could play as Dracula.
Oh, I love Castlevania. That means Castlevania's done for. Oh,
I had such faith in Konami.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. That's funny.
Anyway, time for super chats.
Did we have a conclusion? In conclusion, movies, they're pretty cool. Check them out.
In conclusion, here are some super chats. Dr. Theo gives $2 and says, remember to do today's Wordle, Yards. Yes, I've done today's Wordle. What was it? It was it was one of those tricky words that's got two of the same vowel in it.
Oh, don't spoil it for me. I don't want to know what it is. I haven't done it yet. I don't like two of the same vowels. Also, a couple people have asked. I think the tentative plan is because next week, the back half of next week, a lot of the team minus us are going to Seattle for PAX. Possibly next Wednesday, instead of doing a Yahtzee tries, it might be Yahtzee just does a bunch of word puzzles.
Yeah, I'm just going to do the New York Times crossword and possibly the other New York Times puzzles on stream with maybe 2 co-commenters having a lovely chat.
Jess, if you're free next week Wednesday, you should come on as our resident wordsman.
Oh yes,
wordsmaster.
Yeah, I've heard Jess likes words. I was thinking of inviting her on.
She's a wordsmith.
Jess has to make a top 5 words list. What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite word, Yahtzee?
My favorite word?
Canoodle?
Serendipitous.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's got a lovely flow to it, doesn't it?
It does.
Serendipitous. Anyway, Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says, does an obscure Ace Ventura point and click count? I remember that, but as I said earlier, we were talking about not necessarily direct adaptations. That was more based on the Ace Ventura cartoon show. Do you remember that?
No,
I do remember the cartoon. I didn't realize there was a point and click adventure game. Absolutely.
Well, there was.
I could see it working though. Like what we're seeing in that preview looks kind of fun. I would dig that.
I believe my first point and click adventure game was an FMV adaptation of Muppet Treasure Island.
Oh,
I love that movie so much.
Was that one of those CD-ROM games like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where you just click on stuff?
And it had a bunch of the actors and everything, and it had like Tim Curry and the kid and everything, and obviously all the Muppets and everything. But it was great. Like I just remember loving it. And now I want to look it up and see if it still exists and if I could play it.
Oh my god, I want to play that so bad.
I referenced those sorts of games when I was talking about Thank God You're Here and Yahtzee Tries recently.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. It seems like a product of a bygone era.
Yeah. It was like the age when CDs were new and they were seeing what they could do to stuff as much as they could onto the suddenly much more bountiful disc space.
Mm-hmm.
Which usually meant kind of shitty full motion videos and CD soundtracks with lots of dialogue. Yeah. Alex Armstrong comes back with $2 and says, varies, one hand isolation, other Colonial Marines. Yeah, it's funny how when they actually made a first-person shooter directly influenced by the first-person shooter trappings of Aliens, the result was Colonial Marines, which fucking sucked ass.
Yeah.
Really
Whereas Isolation kind of leaned more towards Alien, right? The claustrophobic horror of Alien.
I think it's difficult to make a Colonial Marines game good because everything about the Alien franchise that is good, in my opinion, is the fact that the alien is so intimidating and unkillable, right? And to make a action game based around killing aliens entertaining in a way, you have to be able to kill at least a few of them.
And for me, you have to lower their power level and raise your power level, and that's how you get Gears and Halo and franchises like that.
Yeah. Of course, it can flip on a dime because once your gun's out of ammo, there ain't shit you're doing to those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was a cool, I believe it was a Nintendo DS Alien game where you played. It was like a 2D Metroidvania, and you played as a team of Colonial Marines who each had like different abilities and stuff. But the whole thing was you load in with the 10 of them, and if they die, that one's just gone. So you can technically finish the game with the whole team, or you can scratch by and finish it with only 1 or 2 left. You're kind of swapping between them all to do different puzzles and different sections.
There's like a really early, there's like a Commodore 64 Aliens game that does something like that, where you switch between like 8 different Marines, and if any of them die, you just can't switch back to them at all.
That's a good way of doing it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Fox D gives $5 and says, this one's way outside my gamer scope, so not much to add, but here's $5 for upsizing the combo meals for y'all's lunches.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Fox D. Yeah, that's not the specific game I was thinking of, Eric, but it looked a bit like that.
There's
been more than a few.
Yeah, like Jack the other day was just talking about an Alien, an RTS he played on.
That's it.
PS1. This one.
That's the one I played when I was a kid.
With the little ship at the bottom and the first person stuff at the top almost looks like the Friday the 13th game for the original NES.
Yeah.
No.
Spooky stuff. Reminded me of Project Firestart. which was like the original sci-fi survival horror game.
I don't think you ever played that.
Well, it was fairly obscure. Commodore 64 only. So yeah, not a big footprint.
Bit of a niche.
But if you go back and watch videos of Project Firestart now, I'm just waiting for Eric to find footage of it. You will probably all go, "Oh my goodness, I can certainly see the influence of this in basically every sci-fi horror game that exists now."
Yeah.
Hairy Sun 94, member for 9 months in tip jar. Thank you very much. Who then gives Sive $8 and says, "My favorite instance has to be Dawn of the Dead, inspiring most OTT silly zombie games, mainly Dead Rising and Left 4 Dead. Dead Rising was pretty blatant with it."
It was, with the mall and everything.
Yeah.
That's getting a remake coming out pretty soon. I'm curious if that game will hold up.
Yeah, I've seen footage of slightly off-puttingly realistic faces on all the characters. Dead Rising.
Yeah.
Some uncanny valley shit.
Uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like how it looks. It makes me think of those. Do you remember that ultra-realistic Mario Photoshop that got sent around?
Yeah, I hate it.
A lot of like modern CG realistic characters reminds me of that.
Like, these people weren't supposed to look like this. They were supposed to look a little cartoony.
Yeah.
The time element of Dead Rising got me thinking. And Dead Rising's not a time loop game, but I think Majora's Mask and time loop games in general can point to Run Lola Run, the movie, as that was a movie about a time loop, about a woman who kept having to like relive the same moment and not succeed at doing what she's trying to do and not die.
And Groundhog's Day and
Groundhog Day. Yeah.
What about Memento? I think there's an influence from Memento in all of that as well.
Have any games done the backwards thing?
It's a great idea. Like, that should be done in games. Like a puzzle, effectively like a suspense puzzle game where you're trying to reveal the information
to unsolve the puzzle. Yeah.
I mean, there are games where, the plot gets dished out over time, so you don't know
or your
exactly
character's
what's happening at the beginning.
So
Yeah. Well, anyway, Spicy.bp gives $2 and says, "Marty, Persona 5 isn't a movie. Don't bring it up."
We didn't mention it once yet. Spicy.bp. I can't believe you've done this.
Oh, but surely there's lots of animes that influence. No, we're not going there.
Well, I already talked about Studio Ghibli. I bet Akira has a lot of. There's got to be a million games that have the cool power slide in Akira.
Oh my god!
There's like supercuts on YouTube of all the millions of things that have referenced the power slide from Akira.
Yeah.
Nope. Jordan Peele's.
Yeah. Because he was attached at one point to do an Akira movie.
So
he's obviously an Akira fan, but yeah.
As much as I'm not a big fan of live actioning animated pieces, especially the Disney ones, I would watch a Jordan Peele Akira. That would be metal as fuck.
Yeah. I guess early animation also was a direct influence on how not only just direct stuff like Cuphead, but how characters look and move and sort of the stretchiness, the elasticity of a character, in terms of how a character is moving and jumps like and Coyote time.
Dragon Ball, huge influence on all of that.
Yeah. I mean, Sonic the Hedgehog's original design is sort of directly cribbed off of like Felix the Cat, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Did Felix the Cat ever kiss a woman though? I bet not.
Probably. He's done a lot of things. Old Felix the Cat.
Congrats, Felix.
Zaratha gives $20 and says, "Finally, a day off on a Monday to catch you silly geese live. Congrats, Marty, on the archive debut. And here's a Brazilian reminder to not give beer to tropical birds. They easily get drunk with only 2 cans.
That's pretty good. For a second, I was like, we would never give beer to them. And then
I only just got it. Okay.
2 cans. 2 cans.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
That took me way too long.
Thank you so much for the kind comments. The first episode of The Archive went up this morning. This is our new season 1 of our retro kind of rewind show. The first episode, Java did an incredible job of taking my words and turning it into genuine art, is all about Mega Man Legends. So tune in for that.
The combo of your writing and Javid's presentation is just like a match made in heaven. It's so good.
Yeah. He's wonderful. Yeah, we got cool episodes coming up. Stuff like Parasite Eve. Speaking of movie games, Peter Jackson's King Kong the movie, the game. which Jay, you're going to join me for when that goes live for Peter Jackson's King Kong,
Oh
the
my
game
God,
and movie,
yes.
the stream. Yeah.
So excited.
The post-archive stream.
There you go.
There you go. Ryan Betts gives $5 and says, in Alien, you don't know the woman is the main character until the end. And in Metroid, you don't know the main character is a woman until the end.
Yeah.
Well,
Metroid,
of course,
definitely.
Metroid never made any bones about being influenced by Alien to the extent that the main villain is named Ridley after Ridley Scott, the director of Alien.
Yeah. And I'd never put those two together. I thought it was just because it was close to Ripley. Jesus Christ. I've played so much Metroid and I've watched so much Alien. Yeah, that is one amazing thing about the first Alien movie is you keep thinking you know who the main character is, and then they die, and you're like, "Who the fuck is the main character of this movie?" Then you're like, "Oh, it's Ripley. She's alive."
Well, I never watched the original Alien movie before I'd seen other Alien media in which Sigourney Weaver is very overtly the protagonist, so I wouldn't know.
I also don't want to be anti-cat, but it is insane to me how obsessed they are with saving the cat in that movie. Like they could have avoided a lot of death if they would have just been like, "Well, we like Jonesy the cat, but may it rest in peace because we need to get out of this ship."
The cat is an innocent. It's like how you can instantly know a dude is bad because he kicks a dog.
Kick the dog.
You say the cat is an innocent. However, the alien never kills the cat, so I feel like both of them are apex predators on their own levels. I think they're just there's like an understanding between them that they're apex predators. Yeah.
You think while the alien was creeping around the ship, it ran into Jonesy. They just did a little fist bump and then continued on their ways.
Yeah, Jonesy pointed with their little paw.
And you saw in Alien 3, the alien just completely obliterates a dog, so he doesn't feel that way about dogs, but feels that way about cats. I'm just saying, Jonesy is the true villain of Aliens.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking of, Ryan Betts then gives $2 and says, also, can my dog Samus get an HBD from Marty?
HBD Samus the dog. It's also my mom's birthday, who is not Samus the dog. So HBD my mom and HBD Samus the dog.
Are you sure?
I don't think my mom knows what a Metroid is, but I don't think they had Metroid.
Or is a dog.
Growing up in Poland. Or is a dog. Yeah, both of those.
Yeah, let's lead with that, Marty.
Mematch120, welcome to the Green Gang. And then Meisterklasse the Heist Air gives €5 and says, I still rewatch Terminator every now and then. Kojima straight up took the design and put it in his game, Snatcher. Yes, I've seen that.
Yeah. Kojima likes movies. Just really, really loves movies.
He's a big movie buff.
Yeah, that's why half of his games are movies. Lol.
Not wrong.
A superb owner gives $5 and says, quick, thank goodness you're here. I am doing the GMTK game jam and forgot the name of the site that Yahtzee recommended for all the free sound effects. It's freesound.org, a superb owner. I feel like you could probably have Googled that.
Freesound.org. I saw that Game Maker's Toolkit does annual game jams. So it's cool that you're participating in
that. Ryan Betts gives $2 and says, Yahtzee and Jermaine do a game jam on stream. When?
That's an idea.
Who's got the time for that and the stress level?
Neither of us, but it's a cool idea.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to float an idea for a game jam game by us, we could rip the shit out of it. That's something we could do.
Well, we've in the back end, we've had ideas of potentially doing some kind of Second Wind Design Delve adjacent game jam event. So, hey, if that's something you guys would be interested in, jump in the Discord and let me know.
Everyone gets 24 hours to make an RPG Maker campaign.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do RPG Maker. I just use Game Maker.
Mario Maker? Could we do Mario Maker?
Game Maker.
I'm very dumb and I need something to be very simple for me.
Game Maker, which incidentally sponsors today's stream, and everyone should check it out because it's good.
Thanks.
Great product.
Fusionator, gift member for 9 months in the Green Gang, says, I liked Archive, angling for a DYKG guest spot. It's winky face.
No. They do intense research and Digino games. They dig up new things. I mostly just want to tell the stories the games I already like.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
Well,
Digino game is great.
Maybe you'd have to be an expert to be able to do that sort of thing.
That's true.
I mean, the Dunning-Kruger effect states that people who are experts on things are less likely to think of themselves as experts on the thing because they know enough to know how much they don't know.
Ah, interesting. I like that.
Maybe
Whereas idiots are more likely to declare themselves experts in things. because they're not smart enough to know how much they don't know.
I have also lived since 2020, so I'm aware of this. I've seen it.
Rose Delta gives $2 and says Halo and Doom were inspired stroke based on Alien. Yeah, fuck, everything's inspired by Alien. We've been over that.
What's not inspired by Alien? Kirby?
Hello Kitty Online.
I don't know. I mean, did you see how cute that little alien was when it burst out of John Hurt's chest?
That's true. That could have been a little Kirby.
Yeah.
I get confused with that scene from Spaceballs where the little alien dances along the bar.
In which they literally cast John Hurt in a cameo to reprise his role.
I haven't seen Spaceballs. That's John Hurt as well.
Yes.
Amazing. I didn't know that.
And then after the chest burster comes out, he says, "Oh no, not again!" just to completely whack you over the head with it, which is one of Mel Brooks' weaknesses as a comedy writer in my book. He's a little bit lampshady for my tastes.
What's your favorite Mel Brooks movie?
The Producers, obviously.
Okay, great. Mine's just because of nostalgia is Young Frankenstein.
That's a good one. I think
it's possible we might just be Gene Wilder fans.
Yeah, I think we are 100%.
Hey, I rewatched Robin Hood Men in Tights recently. Not good, but not bad.
Not really, no.
Not enough Gene Wilder.
No,
nope.
It has 0 Gene Wilders actually.
Yeah, they should have put in Gene Wilder as the blind guy.
Was it on Windbreaker that I spoke about the Gene Wilder documentary and my conflicting emotions about it?
No, I don't think so.
So I watched the Gene Wilder life documentary where people are just gushing about who, of course, Mel Brooks is in it, and they're just gushing about how great of a guy Gene Wilder was, but they use quotes from his memoirs in the documentary, but they use, I think, unless they have a recording of him reading his own book, which is likely, I think they were using AI to generate his voice so that he could read his own book. I think, allegedly, unless he did an audiobook version of his memoirs or anything.
I hate it.
It was a great documentary, but there was something about him reading his own writing that put me off. I was like, oh, who knows?
Moving on. Lee Revy gives 10,000. Ooh, I don't think I've ever seen that currency before. What's that one?
Googling.
Well, we've got 10,000 of them, whatever they are.
South Korean won.
Ooh, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. He says, I played The Last of Us when I was a teenager and got wowed by the stories. To be honest, it was just Troy Baker's acting. And after I watched Children of Men, my delusions fell off.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great film. Great film,
Amazing
Children of Men.
Yeah. I still think The Last of Us is good. I know that's an unpopular opinion. I still think The Last of Us is good.
I still think it's a little bit weird how often British sci-fi depicts Britain descending into a fascist state.
It's a constant worry.
Yeah, I think it comes out of the Thatcherism from the 80s. But,
1984. It's very British.
Yeah. But it seems to have been a constant worry of the British sci-fi writers. I mean, V for Vendetta, 1984.
Real Life,
We Happy Few.
Yeah.
The what was that other game? Not Tonight. The Papers, Please game.
Yeah.
If I open that window over there, fascism is just going to get beamed in. That's why I keep this.
Yes, you're going to be blinded by the fascism.
Stickman Grit gives $10 and says, since I missed last week live, what if Final Fantasy Spirits Within never happened or made money? No Squeenix merger? No bailout from Sony needed? Whole mess of variables in play?
Yeah.
Well, that's a big fucking if, Stickman Grit.
That's a huge thing because Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy, was given free reins to create a new studio in Hawaii. And it started off as, a game studio. They helped co-develop Parasite Eve with the Japan studio. And then the big thing was all right, just bring this movie into fruition. And it's going to be really expensive, and its technology is going to push the medium forward. And the movie was a giant flop and got him out of the company. Square needed money. The merger happened. And that sort of ended Square's very exciting PS1 era where they just took chances all the time because Final Fantasy VII made them so much money that they were able to be like, all right, this one Final Fantasy game can fund 10 weird projects that are fighting games and small RPGs and racing games. And
Oh well. Maybe Square Enix wouldn't suck so much.
Rude.
Oh Jesus, we've got Jess's top 5 words.
Oh, lovely.
Which are picturesque, transient, ambient, obsidian, and twat. Good on you.
Obsidian.
Well, right up into the last one, I was like, "You got a real diphthong fetish, haven't you, Jess?"
Diphthong. What does that mean?
Yeah. A diphthong is when you put two vowels together in a way that changes the sound. So the ear in eant would be in ambient would be a diphthong.
Oh,
She says you know it. You guys are too intellectual.
But yes, twat is one of my favorites too.
And until recently, she was pronouncing it wrong. I'm glad I could educate her on that.
Oh, she wasn't one of those Americans that pronounce it twat, are they?
Yeah, like someone who is in this call currently.
Me?
Yeah, you for the longest time you couldn't pronounce the word twat.
I don't say it. I don't think
I've heard you multiple times
if I say it.
A twat. Or
I think it's cultural appropriation if I use it.
Well, if you go back and watch George Carlin's classic 7 words you can't say on television bit, he pronounces it twat as well. And I presume that's where all the Americans are getting it from.
And he's great. R.I.P. He's great in Dogma.
Big rip.
Anyway, Sovereign gives €10. I just want to say congrats on the new show, Marty. Very well put together first episode. Here is some monies as thanks for the work.
Oh, thank you. So much of that is on Java. He did the excellent thumbnail, all the goofs and spoofs in the edit. So he's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. And then Corvus Vocatio gives $5 and says, "This is unrelated, but have any of you played OTXO, pronounced Ocho? It's like Hotline Miami, but with bullet time, and it's been a blast." No, I haven't heard of that.
Oh, it looks kind of neat. Yeah, it looks exactly like Hotline Miami, but very like black and white except for the blood. Came out last year. Kind of looks a little spooky. There's a nun.
Oh no, not a spooky nun. Oh, I do remember seeing this game when I was like, I remember seeing it and thinking, why do I need to play that? I've already played Hotline Miami.
But it's been a while.
It's been a hot line minute.
Hairy Sun 94 gives $2 and says GTA and Payday owe so much to Heat as well, which we went over, of course.
I want more. I want a game a multiplayer game that is able to give me the excitement of a well-planned heist, less like a bank robbery and more of like a Ocean's 11. I like a heist that has little twists, and you think everything's gone to hell, but going to hell was part of the plan. Is it going to have
different gameplay mechanics for each kind of step, or is it going to?
I think that'd be cool. Like each player or each character you play as has a very different set of skills. That's like, the sweet talker is very different than the crack safer is very different than the
Did you ever play Teardown?
No.
I did. I played a little bit of the demo. That's the one where you can like complete the levels any way you want, and it's all destruction.
I always thought that game gave me a sense of heist planning because you have to plan the most efficient possible route through various objectives, and you'd have to decide. You'd have to case the joint and set up a path. Yeah. I quite enjoyed that aspect of it.
Sounds cool.
Sort of the heist planning experience writ small.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says Godzilla had varying results. It had the PS4 trash. Of course, that's only one of the video games based on Godzilla. I think there was a one-on-one fighting game based on Godzilla at one point.
It was, and I really enjoyed that one. It influenced a lot of other ones. It was one of my hidden games that I needed a community help me find, which is called Monster Wars.
War of the Monsters on PS2?
Yeah, on the front cover it kind of looks like Optimus Prime.
Like a robot fighting a big kaiju.
Yeah, like a Gundam. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Super cool.
Yeah, but even levels in like Psychonauts has an entire level where you're like a Godzilla-esque monster traipsing over like a city and everything. So yeah, I feel like that's like almost the things. Anytime you're fighting a big thing, a small thing is fighting a big thing in a game. Yeah. Like it owes itself to the kaiju and monster movie. Boom.
Yeah.
Corvus Vocatio gives $5 and says, I forgot to mention it also has roguelike elements. referring to Ocho, which they brought up in their previous super chat, as well as being entirely solo developed and composed. Well, now you're speaking my language. Cool, it's okay to you.
Sounds great.
Hawker Bridging gives $1.99 and says, "Loved the new show, Marty. Can't wait for more."
Aw, thank you.
Hell yeah, brother.
And then Lamb Slaughter gives £5 and says, "Not just aliens for Halo. Master Chief has got to be a straight rip of Kurt Russell's titular character from Soldier." Oh yes, that well-known film and performance everybody knows.
Everyone, all Russell heads.
Yes.
All Rossi
Kurt
boys.
Squad, rise up.
Rossi
boys.
Yeah. The Kurt Squad. I don't know. I was trying to think of a word that rhymed with Kurt. The Kurt Cabal. There we go.
The Kurt
Cabal. I like it.
Yeah. Hawker Bridging gives $4.99 and says, "Always felt RoboCop had an influence on the visual style of early 90s side-scrollers. Ghost in the Shell definitely influenced many PS1/PS2 era titles."
Yeah.
Yeah, RoboCop certainly gives me the vibe of one of those arcade light gun shooters, you know? Like Virtua Cop.
Yeah.
But dudes pop out from behind things and you gun them down with perfect accuracy.
Yeah, and you kind of just like wander through, like you feel like very mechanical.
Like you're at an arcade machine, right?
Yeah. That's why RoboCop, the recent game, reminded me of those games as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lost the place. Here we go. Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says, "Do Disney movies or RPGs have more influence on Kingdom Hearts?"
I mean, yeah, that's direct.
As I've said before, I always wonder why Disney gives Kingdom Hearts such free reign with its characters.
Yeah,
I mean, they usually keep a tight lid on that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it feels like there's like nothing precious in terms of like where they can and can't go. Yeah, that relationship has always been very strange to me between Disney and Square.
They had a fucking Tron level once in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah,
Kingdom Hearts 2, yeah.
Yeah, of all things.
Yeah.
Lee Revy gives 5,000, comes back with 5,000 Korean whatever they were ones, and says, "Heard Silent Hill 2 was heavily influenced by Solaris. Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah.
Session 9.
Yeah. Oh man, I remember Session 9.
All kinds of famous American films influenced Silent Hill 2. Oh, Solaris was a Russian film, wasn't it? Originally?
Yeah, that was Tartakovsky.
Yes. I wanted to think if there was any other, like, well, what's like at the root of the horror DNA that brought us Silent Hill 2? Possibly like
Ladder, I feel like is a big one there.
I'd say if you went all the way back to like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, sort of the whole vibe of innocent person arrives in spooky town.
Yeah, immediately realizing you're in a place you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Yeah, keeping you extremely underpowered as well. Not like, well, I'm going to be able to take care of these monsters because I'm a hero.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 7, very overtly Texas Chainsaw Massacre influenced.
Yeah.
Spicy.bp gives $5 and says, "Avatar brought waiting years for a sequel just for it to be not that good. Dig at Silksong, MP4, and Beyond Good and Evil 2. Sorry, Jermaine."
I mean, you could say that.
I think that was
made like $2 billion. So
yeah, I keep hearing that, and I still don't know why.
I don't know. We just collectively, society goes into a fugue state every few years when James Cameron releases a movie.
I also, the strangest thing about Avatar 2, and correct me if I'm wrong, Marty, I might just be having a stroke. I remember you constantly going on about like how much you loved it, and then we were having a meeting or something, and I came back and I was like, "Yeah, I've seen Avatar 2. It's great. What do you think, Marty?" And you were like, "I haven't seen it."
Yeah, no, I was very much on the train as the movie was coming out. Before it came out, people were like, "This is going to bomb," and I'm like, "Big Jim doesn't miss. This movie's going to be huge. People are going to love it. It's going to make a ton of money." And so I was caping for Big Jim. And then the movie came out, and I still have not seen it because I'm just not that interested in Avatar. I just wanted people to know it was going to be a big deal. I was a cheerleader without interest in the thing.
Not for Avatar, okay.
You know, I just played through Crime Scene Cleaner last week, and the main mob boss in that game who you work for is named Big Jim.
Oh, God.
Jim Cameron.
Yes,
did he make $1 billion?
By a strange coincidence.
Yeah.
No, he makes an awful lot of bodies for me to clean up, though.
What a bastard.
He's
Well,
really
keeps you
big
in
on
business.
that.
Hey, you got work.
Yeah.
He's thinking of you.
He's just getting paid. See, that's interesting. That must be old footage of Crime Scene Cleaner because he's wearing yellow gloves, and in the game he wears black gloves.
Maybe you need to unlock them.
No,
Maybe you
there's
should
no
make a Reddit post about it.
There's no cosmetic options.
Yeah.
It's got the Scrub Daddy though. Yeah, the Scrub Daddy made it into the final build.
We love a scrub daddy.
Anyway, Nick Knoll gives $5 and says, Spider-Man game is my favorite for evoking a movie feel. Getting phone calls about missing a birthday party while fighting muggers gave me actual anxiety. Okay, that's not the thing most people latch onto from the Spider-Man game, but yeah.
I mean, that's a very Peter Parker thing, right? Is like being able to balance your one life with your other life.
Live his life.
That's his whole shtick, yes. I mean, everyone else seems to manage. Stop whining, Pete, mate.
He's a child. He's a high schooler.
Well, he doesn't pay for his own rent then, does he?
Oof.
He has to help with groceries.
Spider-Man confirmed layabout.
Yeah, we forgot to bring the bins in. Shit.
I mean, Aunt May works at like a soup kitchen in the most recent game. I don't think she's raking in the bucks.
Well, especially now that she's dead.
R.I.P.
Rip, Big May.
Rest in peace to a real one, Big May. Big May.
Big May. Doran Grossman Naples gives $5 and says, before Fortnite and PUBG, I remember Minecraft Hunger Games being quite popular among the kids.
Yeah, Hunger Games, like Battle Royale came out, and then Hunger Games kind of obviously Americanized it and brought it to like Hollywood pop culture, and yeah, I think those are kind of tied in together. That's what.
Sorry.
Oh no! So just one of the things I'm kind of worried about, and Darren's written about this quite a bit, is like so much popular culture now is like regurgitated nostalgia that it just doesn't feel like generations have their own pop culture anymore. It's like recycled, almost reused.
I was going to say that earlier.
Counterpoint: there's going to be a lot of 30-year-old Bluey fans in about 20 years.
Yeah, that is true.
But you were speaking, Marty, about we can't really name a lot of movies that have influenced games in the last 20 years.
Yeah,
and I think that's why is because the movie industry has also taken a big shift. It's moved into producing rehashes and remakes and long-awaited sequels. So they're not bringing anything new to the table, and hence that's having a knock-on effect on the games industry, which is also currently doing the same thing.
Yes, like 9 different people, including KC, simultaneously posted, there's 30-year-old Bluey fans now. There'll be a lot more 30-year-old Bluey fans, was my point. Anyway, Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says, I think Jurassic Park inspired Far Cry 1 in a way. I think you're right, Alex Armstrong. Yeah. When I was on honeymoon in Hawaii, I took a helicopter tour of the island, and they made a special point of pointing out the bits that they used for the island in Jurassic Park.
Mm-hmm.
And Far Cry 1 certainly brings to mind those sweeping vistas through mountainous tropical islands that Jurassic Park was so fond of.
Yeah, it definitely feels like Ridley Scott and Spielberg might be those two directors we keep coming back to, as so many of their works feel like they left a thumbprint on.
Funny that the people who make the most well-known and influential films in the world left an influence on other forms of media as well.
And also have done the most varied work. I think
that's true.
A lot of the times people underestimate how varied Spielberg's and James Cameron's library of media is. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's always
there's a couple of blatant themes that keep coming up, like the sea in James Cameron films.
Yeah,
he loves water.
Yeah, it's got a big hard on for that.
I think that's one of the reasons why Stanley Kubrick is probably my favorite director ever, is because every movie feels like like trying himself in a completely different genre. Which is wildly impressive.
That was a range. The Shining, Barry Lyndon, A Clockwork Orange,
Full Metal Jacket,
2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah, Spartacus. Yeah, real impressive.
And yet you can see his thumbprint on every one of those.
Mm-hmm.
They always got someone doing that thing where they tip their head forward and stare into camera looking weird.
I always feel like his thumbprint would be greasy.
You think he was a greasy boy?
Stanley Kubrick gives me greasy thumbs vibes.
Yeah. He notoriously, like John Madden, afraid of flying. Didn't want to fly anywhere.
Well, he doesn't seem to have a very good hair care regimen. To look at him,
like me.
He's too busy abusing his actors.
Doctor Strangelove as well.
No, she said she wasn't abused. She's just a good
Doctor
actor.
Strangelove as well. Yes, comedy.
Oh, what a good movie!
Oh my god, yeah. Holy shit.
Tsunami Dusha gives $20 and no super chat.
Thanks, Tsunami Dusha.
And then Aaron Ducker gives $10 and says, "Shout out to Marty, the true MVP of Second Wind. The X-Files and Lost are my two fave shows, so he's my spirit animal. Also, Sunset Overdrive was the first game on my Steam Deck. Congrats on the archive."
Love you, Aaron Ducker.
You have my commiserations, Aaron Ducker.
X-Files and Lost are so good. Did you know Darren wrote an entire goddamn book on the X-Files?
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea.
A whole book where you go season by season and has big old essays on each of them. Good stuff.
Hey, I've written books too. We should hang out.
Yeah, someday we will get the Darren Yahtzee stream. You guys can start Star Trek and Doctor
I can't
Who.
read. I'll sit in the corner like a cuck.
Yes.
Reading
Darren,
novel cuck.
Get cucked.
This might surprise you, listeners, but I've genuinely never spoken to Darren Mooney because he's all
That
films, and I'm like,
you guys would get on like a house on fire.
He's like 100% films, and I'm 0% films. So what have we got to talk about?
But combined, you're 100% films and 100% games. Think about that.
And 5% books.
If we had like a radio show together, he'd do the first half and review movies, and I'd do the second half and review video games, and maybe we'd have some fun banter in between.
There you go. We're gonna make it happen.
Jeremy Claybrook gives $50.
Oh my gosh, Jeremy.
A deep magenta super chat. And says, "Nothing to add to discussion. Just wanted to say love you guys and joined Patreon to support after all the recent drama. Keep on keeping on." Well, I'm glad we're actually getting followers from the recent drama. That's a contrast, isn't it?
Thank you so much for your support.
SGSGO 2000, member for 9 months in the Green Gang, says all racing games were inspired by Michel Vaillant.
So I didn't know who this was. I googled them, and apparently it was like Tintin adjacent and did French race car comics that looked pretty cool.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know if those comics kind of. Some of it even looks like how the way Speed Racer looks, which I guess how to shoot an interesting car, like an interesting race.
And I thought Jamate was the only Tintin adjacent thing of my knowledge.
I've got a counterpoint for this. I think
it's
most
the hair. It's the hair.
Oh yeah, I guess I do have quite a Tintin hair. Oh, I'm not going to be able to unsee that now. For fuck's sake.
We're going to start calling your dog. What was it, Snowy? Was that the name of his dog?
Yeah.
Oh my god, Snowy.
Yes.
Snowy.
It's Tintin and Snowy.
Yeah.
Come here.
Casey says Jamate doesn't.
I don't know what she is.
Energy.
Ludo, come here. There we go. Yeah. Oh god, I do have Tintin hair. Oh no. So I've got a counterpoint for this. I think most racing video games were influenced by cars and how they move and operate.
I thought you were going to say the movie Cars. I was like,
no. But then also wacky races. I think a lot of games. I don't know. Do you guys have that in America? Wacky races.
It's an old cartoon, right?
Yeah, the one where they race each other and they use power ups and stuff and the special stuff in the cars.
Yeah. Although that in turn was influenced by "It's a Mad, 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 Mad World," the original comedic race movie.
Yeah.
The Cannonball Run.
Mm-hmm.
See, I know old films. I just haven't watched any films the last 20 years.
Yeah, they're not good anymore. You're fine.
Interestingly, "It's a Mad, 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 Mad World" features a Peter Falk in a small role, who would later be Columbo. So if that gives you enough reason to check out old movies, there you go.
Yeah, we got some Columbo files here.
Happy Jack gives $2 and says Streets of Fire inspired every beat 'em up game. If you like, I don't think I know what Streets of Fire is.
Is that like the Warriors? I think of the Warriors a lot when it comes to beat 'em up.
Yeah.
Games. Oh my gosh, Streets of Fire looks great. A young Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, with the cool cool greaser hair. Awesome.
Raven, and his name's Raven Shattuck. That's a good name.
Raven Shattuck.
Hell yeah. Oh, it was by the guy Walter Hill, who wrote Alien.
Huh.
So there you go.
I thought Dan O'Bannon wrote Alien.
There was a couple dudes. I think one dude did the sciencey stuff and one dude did the spooky stuff.
I've always said the problem about Alien is that it doesn't really have an owner, as in, like, the George Lucas to Star Wars or the Gene Roddenberry to Star Trek. Who could you point to and say, this guy created Alien?
Sure.
Ridley Scott?
Well, especially okay. So Dan O'Bannon wrote my mistake. Wrote Alien, and Walter Hill wrote Aliens. Which again points to the fact that.
Well, the idea for Alien was come up with by Dan O'Bannon, who shot the screenplay around, and Ridley Scott was attached as director. But the iconic imagery of the Alien was brought to us by H.R. Geiger, of course.
That's right.
And then James Cameron made Aliens and made it his own, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but also with Prometheus and whatever the
Covenant.
Covenant, like Ridley Scott came back to retake ownership of that. I think when most people think of Alien, it's either H.R. Geiger or Ridley Scott that they think of immediately. Then James Cameron, I think, is just below that.
Yeah, no one's thinking of David Fincher or Jean-Pierre Jeunet. Jean-Pierre Jeunet, now Jean-Benet.
Not positively, anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think both of those directors came away from that franchise unscathed. I think David Fincher's
their best days were ahead.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says, more TV, but Hell's Angels influenced Ride to Hell. Or were they both just influenced by biker gang culture?
Yeah. Yeah, that might be like... Yeah, being, pulling from the same... Which I don't know if those are pulled from, like, Easy Rider, those kind of things.
The original biker movies, Rebel
Without
a Cause.
There's certain movies that kind of, like, codified how we think of a setting. Kind of Mad Max and a post-apocalyptic kind of wasteland, like George Miller's movies would go on, Borderlands and Rage and stuff, obviously pulling from that visual aesthetic.
Mm. With a little sprinkling of Cowboy Bebop in there as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Thought Takes gives $5 and says, you pronounce the R in memoir. The original French is mémoire. I don't pronounce the R in memoir. I say moi, as in moi.
I say memoir.
I say it like a fucking warrior. Moi.
Memoir.
Memoir. Memoir.
Like a pirate.
You sound like a pirate. Yeah. Did Pirates of the Caribbean? Do we think that did anything with the influence games?
Well,
those movies are really good. Those first three movies are very good.
Well, that was knocking off the Secret of Monkey Island. Pirates of the Caribbean. It's basically a Secret of Monkey Island movie.
Yeah.
I'm always surprised we didn't get the ride that existed of it.
That's true.
Well, of course, Secret of Monkey Island took influence from the ride, so it's.
We've gone full circle.
I mean, I guess it's that Indiana Jones influenced the creation of Tomb Raider, which influenced the creation of Uncharted, and the success of Uncharted influenced Tomb Raider coming back, and the success of both of those influenced Indiana Jones getting turned into a game. So it's like a weird incestuous relationship there.
The weird one with Pirates of the Caribbean also comes full circle because it influenced a lot of sea naval battle based games, namely Sea of Thieves, which has a Pirates of the Caribbean tie-in DLC and Secret of Monkey Island.
And Monkey Island,
yeah. Another game where franchises come to die.
Yeah. Rip.
CJ Amused gives $5 and says Pink Floyd's The Wall influencing so much, including the constant works about Britain's descent into fascism. There you go.
Floating pig.
Don't open those blinds.
Yes. Of course, most of the kids will know Pink Floyd's The Wall from Folding Ideas video about the Nostalgia Critic about The Wall.
The Nostalgia Critic. Yeah. It's such a good video.
Yeah. JPando27 gives $5 and says, speaking of British dystopias, was there ever a video game based on Brazil?
I don't think so.
Well,
I don't think so.
Unless you count all those Monty Python point-and-click CD-ROM games that Terry Gilliam presumably also worked on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brazil's another of those. Yeah. V for Vendetta style, Orwell's 1984 things. Why is Angry Birds on the screen?
That's I think
Eric just loves his Angry Birds. Just really
yeah. He says this every time we get on a call with him. He's like, "Have you guys played Angry Birds recently?"
Yeah, and we're like, "No, we have not, Eric. Stop bringing it up." Yeah, Brazil. You could see some of its influence on sort of cluttered urban design, near future urban design, where it just feels like a lot of vents. And that's sort of, I guess, magical realism a little bit in Psychonauts, even Stanley Parable, some of that humor.
Now that you mention it, when I think of like video games that feel like they were inspired by Brazil, my first thought was Dishonored.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Fair.
Like the design of the city, almost.
Yeah, in terms of aesthetics and like world design.
Yeah, I can see that.
Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says, "How much do Japanese horror films owe Fatal Frame? As much as every other horror game that references The Ring, I suppose."
Yeah, I mean, stuff like Fatal Frame was a little late to the J horror really started in the late '90s in movies with The Grudge and The Ring and everything, and so I feel like Fatal Frame was very quick to crib off that, while Resident Evil had a more, I guess, Western sensibility for horror.
Yeah, Fatal Frame feels more drenched in sort of standard Japanese horror tropes. Like the whole concept of a piece of technology acting weird because of ghosts is a very classic Japanese horror theme.
Yeah.
I mean, The Ring is all about that.
Yeah.
And if you look for it, you see it everywhere in Japanese horror. The Grudge,
phone signals.
Phones go weird, dark water.
Yeah.
Where like a building's infrastructure goes weird on someone.
That's a little Silent Hill right there.
PJ Doolin gives $5 and says, "Independence Day or War of the Worlds definitely spawned games like Earth Defense Force."
Yeah, that's a good.
That's
a good shot. Yeah, War of the Worlds just inspired the way we think about those like tripod. Like that's just iconography that is everywhere now.
Yeah, Half-Life 2 very overtly.
Yeah.
I had a moment with a friend where we were just brainstorming, game ideas and stuff, and I was like, "Oh, I'd love to see an asymmetrical game where 4 people are hiding from another player who's playing a tripod, and they have to hunt you and stuff like that." And they were like, "That would never work as a game." And then the next day, I can't remember what the team is, but they announced that they're making an asymmetrical War of the Worlds game.
War of the Worlds? Yeah.
Yeah, where you play as a tripod hunting other players. Yeah. I'm like, well, there we go.
Well, I guess that's one thing that probably wouldn't work in Dead by Daylight.
Yeah, that's one thing where there's not enough games where the asymmetrical multiplayer is one player just being big as shit and the other people being very small.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I just love tripods. There's Titanfall kind of does the thing where you can get in a mech or you can be on foot.
Yeah.
So they're not as imposing, right? It's the sheer size and their power to destroy and just the sound. Just like I would love to do that.
I think it's difficult to make video game graphics look good on 2 different scale levels.
That is very true.
Yeah.
It is. You have some weird LOD fuckery there.
Yeah. Geo213, member for 9 months in tip jar. Thank you very much. A Winged Potato gives $4.99 and says, "Speaking of Tarkovsky, I feel like Stalker has had a significant impact both on the game of the same name and games of that ilk."
Yes.
Yeah, very much being like a lone survivor or explorer in a world that is already clearly dead. Like even that, when we talk about Dark Souls, like that always feels like it is post-apocalypse in the way that like this has already happened. Like this world has already been ruined, and you're just kind of putting together
fantasy. That's a nice.
Yeah.
Was Stalker before Fallout and Wasteland and all of those games?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean Stalker, I think was the Stalker the movie or Stalker the game?
Stalker the movie was like the 70s, right? Like,
it was like I think the book and the movie predated games as a whole. Because there was that book Roadside Picnic, which was by not Ursula Le Guin. I think it's a Russian author.
Stalker was in 79.
The only one I can think of is Tolstoy and Stanislav Lem. Those are the only 2 Russian authors that leap to mind.
I think Lem's Polish, isn't it?
I don't know. That's how little I know about Russian literature.
I mean, they're very close together. They just touch.
PJ Doolin gives $5 and says, "Destroy All Humans" is certainly an homage to 50s alien and monster films.
Yeah, but that genre has its share of, I mean, even a little bit of Earth Defense Force, but like Stubbs the Zombie had a kind of 50s Americana.
I think XCOM sort of takes a bit of that vibe as well, especially with the grey aliens.
Yeah.
J.A. Griffiths gives $2 and says, "For the Tintin reference." I was a big fan of Tintin growing up. Tintin and Asterix and all of those.
Also, big shout out to the new Peter Jackson Spielberg collaboration Tintin movie. That was, I say new, it was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it flopped hard.
Yeah, I liked it.
Pretty good though. Pretty good.
Mainly because I starred in it, apparently. But
yeah. You and Ludo.
Well, I've seen clips of it, and it just throws me off how it sort of straddles the line between realistic and cartoony appearances.
Yeah.
To the point that it just looks like everyone.
Valley.
Yeah, it's very uncanny valley. Everyone just looks like normal people wearing prosthetic noses and ears.
Yeah.
Yeah, case in point. Again, makes me think of the ultra-realistic Mario Photoshop. A lot of CG movies do, because there's a lot of people in the visual effects department trying to look busy, just adding pores to people's skin.
More pores.
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you, Eric. Tsunami Douche gives $5 and says, "Narratively, I wonder how many games are influenced by the Sixth Sense."
With like big twists and.
Well, Shyamalan didn't invent big twists.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to grasp. Like, what is the Sixth Sense influencing?
He was influenced by Hitchcock.
Hitchcock, definitely, yeah. But I mean, You're Dead all along. When I'm trying to think of games that have final act mega twists in a similar vein as The Sixth Sense, you do think of stuff like, without spoiling it, Silent Hill 2 or BioShock, which all were after The Sixth Sense. I don't know if I'd say either one.
KOTOR and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That sort of identity twist goes back to Empire Strikes Back, doesn't it?
Yeah, it goes.
Yeah, and it just feels like that was an era. Same with like Metal Gear Solid 2, where twists became more prominent in games just because the game narratives kind of grew up a little bit, and we're telling those kinds of stories that could have those kind of twists.
Yeah, I feel like if we look far enough back, though, we can say that a lot of the things that have influenced games are from genres and movie tropes that are way back, like Hitchcock and like the serials that influenced Star Wars, Indiana Jones and stuff like that. The further you go back, the more you'd be like, well, this kind of idea of movies influenced those popular movies being made in the 80s and 90s, which then influenced games, right?
Yeah, almost everything's cyclical.
Yeah.
Alex Armstrong gives $5 and says, "Besides Red Dwarf, Star Trek seems to have influenced Starstruck Vagabond by the game, right down to the amalgam commander looking like TNG Picard." Yes, I said in like a couple of episodes in Dev Diary Season 2, I very overtly shouted out Star Trek as an influence. I wanted to recreate that sort of episodic thing with the crew quests where you meet them, then something dramatic happens, and then it smash cuts to like the opening credits in the classic TNG cold open fashion.
Yeah.
That was absolutely my intention.
Yeah. Yeah, like a lot of games, FTL, you see the inspiration there. Even that the one multiplayer game we played the other year a bunch with me, you, and Jack, and whatever that one was.
I specifically made it so that the crew quests aren't just a side quest you can do alongside other things. Once you get into a crew quest, you're stuck in it until you resolve it. Because I wanted to make it feel more like an episodic TV series rather than just like a list of things to do on the side if you feel like it. Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says, "Zombie films, The Last of Us, Days Gone, Walking Dead, etc."
Yeah, those. Yes. I feel like the Romero zombie movies, and then Night of the Living Dead, or not Night of the Living Dead, but 28 Days Later.
One of the Dead.
I feel like are kind of the texts of zombies. Like all zombie stories can point back to Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, or that.
Yeah, and they're all pretty samey, and then And so one day somebody just said, "Hey, what if they ran instead of walked?" And everyone was like, "Why didn't we think of that?"
It's kind of nuts.
And a
though.
whole-
Holy hell, this changes everything.
And
I thought
suddenly the
zombies have to
genre
shamble.
was suddenly the genre was revitalized.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now it's gonna be what if they fly? The zombies have wings.
I mean, the whole shambling zombie thing sort of comes from Karloff's Frankenstein. But if you read the original Frankenstein book, the Frankenstein monster was actually quite a spry and articulate fella.
Agile big man.
Yeah,
Big Frank.
he argued his
Frank.
case pretty eloquently, I thought.
Big Frank.
Well, that's the end of the super chats. So thank you very much for listening to another Windbreaker podcast. I'm Yahtzee Crucial. I was joined by Jamate and his adorable dog Snowy.
Oh,
We're going to go on an adventure after this.
And also by Marty Slaver.
and no dogs because I'm allergic to everything.
So, what else can we look forward to this week? Well, my specific stuff, fully Ramblematic, of course, on Wednesday, and Yahtzee Tries, streaming 2 new indie games that I have not decided on yet. And, well, actually, that's it from me this week. Apart from my usual appearance in Adventurers Nigh, the Season 2, Episode 1 remaster will be going out on Saturday. What else can we look forward to on Second Wind this week?
Got a design delve this week on Friday.
Can you tease the topic?
The topic is, oh my god, why is it just evaporated from my brain? I spent all day writing it. I need to literally go figure this out. Marty, do your plug while I actually go look up what I've done all day.
Incredible. Wait, Game Dev's lying to you.
Yes, that's the one. The topic is Game Dev's lying to you is good, actually. So it's all about how we lie and manipulate players for their benefit, and a horrific amount of examples, which is it's going to be a hefty one. So see you in that one.
A beefy boy.
Oh yes,
real beefy boy. Excellent. Yeah, we got a bunch of good stuff the rest of the week. Later today, 6 p.m. Central, normal time. Jesse and Jess will be back for Hidden Gems, playing the new kind of top-down tactical RPG Western called Arco, which looks pretty cool. I believe Casey will not be there because Casey has to take us on to the airport. So it'll be just Jess and Jesse. Tomorrow, slightly different schedule tomorrow. The rewind is going to be an hour earlier at 11 a.m. Central. Darren, Jack, and I going to be chatting about Alien Romulus because Darren has a hard out at noon. So it'll be a little bit of a shorter episode starting at 11 a.m. But we'll be back just a little bit later at around 1 p.m. Central. Jamate, Casey, Eric, and myself will be back for the Gamescom opening night live showcase. So the Keeleys, 2 hours of game reveals and all that nonsense. Tune in for that. There'll be a new backdrop tomorrow. This weekend we'll have Adventurers Nigh Season 2, Episode 1. So Season 2 will begin this weekend on Adventurers Nigh. And then, yeah, like we mentioned earlier, check out the first episode of The Archive that went live today.
100%
there on Mega Man Legends. So
amazing episode.
I think that's it.
All right. So you've got plenty of content to keep you amused, you grabby bastards.
Oh.
So I'll see you all on Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.